So is the government at war with the Reserve Bank over interest rates? Joining me now is Geoff Wilson, the chairman of Wilson Asset Management. Geoff, you've been working in the financial sector for decades. Have you ever seen a disconnect like this between the government and the Reserve Bank?
Well, let's hope it's only short term, and let's hope it's misinterpretation of words. But the comments earlier this week from Jim Chalmers, trying to blame the Reserve Bank for our current economic conditions, I actually thought was incredibly disappointing. If that was the case, I know he's backpedaled a little bit, and let's hope they're not at war. But it's not looking that way. I mean, to me, it's in no one's interest. The Reserve Bank has to be totally independent, and government's got to keep their nose totally out of what the Reserve Bank are doing.
Yeah, you mentioned those comments. The Treasurer Jim Chalmers basically was saying higher interest rates are smashing the economy. Is commentary like that helpful at a time like this?
Not at all. Not at all. And the frustrating thing from my perspective is, and anyone who looks at the economic numbers, you look at the last budget and the budget before, they are inflationary budgets, and so they're actually working against what the Reserve Bank's trying to achieve. Now, in terms of interest rates, obviously I know people with home loans and people suffering in parts of the economy. It is very challenging at the moment, as we've seen with the economic figures the other day. They need to be supported. So you actually need confidence. You don't want uncertainty. And with the government pumping the money into the system, which they have been doing for the last couple of years, that's one of the reasons why interest rates are still where they are now.
Yeah, well, you mentioned those June GDP numbers. Government spending was one of the big things that kept the economy in positive territory in that June quarter. So it sort of feels like the RBA is going in one direction, trying to slow things down, and then the government is going the other, trying to speed things up.
Unfortunately, that's right. I mean, when you're trying to get interest rates down and try to get inflation under control, you actually don't want money being pumped into the system. And unfortunately, that's the scenario we're in at the moment. And coming to this quarter, we're going to get the benefit of the tax cuts. So that's $20-odd billion that's going to flow through back into the economy. So you should see the numbers, economically holding up well, but in terms of interest rates, my guess is we're probably not going to see lower interest rates for the next 12 months in Australia.
Yeah, you mentioned the tax cuts. They're now filtering into the system. We've also got electricity rebates for every household and business, plus a lot more for Queensland. What can the governor really do at a time like this? She sort of said she might consider lifting rates. Do you think that's actually a possibility?
Frustratingly, I think for everyone that has a mortgage, it is a possibility. And if, all she's got to do is keep a close eye on, the economic numbers, which they are doing. What we need to do is we need to get this inflation under control. Then everyone will benefit, medium long term. And I think, as she mentioned the other day, like if we don't get this inflation under control, then we may be, then unfortunately the economy might be grinding to a bit of a halt.
And Geoff, when you look back and reflect over the past few decades, do any time periods jump out at you for when the RBA and the government really worked hand in hand to bring inflation down successfully?
I think there have been time periods. In terms of exact periods, I really haven't got my finger on the pulse. I can't think off the top of my head, but it's more don't work against each other. To me, and it just unfortunately it appears, up until the last month or so, I actually thought, the government was sticking to focus on their areas, and also I thought the governor of the Reserve Bank was being very diplomatic in terms of the messages or the messaging that she was putting out before this last week or so, when I'm not sure if it's a misinterpretation of Jim Chalmers' comments, which he seems to have backpedaled a little bit on it, but to me he's got to backpedal a long way. and give the Reserve Bank his 100% support. And unfortunately, with the previous governor, the government used him as a scapegoat as well. So to me, it's just it's of no value to anyone, and it creates uncertainty and actually increases our costs. In terms of creating uncertainty, increases interest rates as well.
And just really quickly, Geoff, the GDP numbers, they were pretty weak, but are you expecting the economy to pick up over the next 12 months?
I think next quarter, or this quarter we're in at the moment, being the September quarter, obviously with the tax cuts, that'll be positive. I think it's going to be a very tough, it's going to be a tough 6 to 9 months period, with interest rates holding where they are. Obviously there's one segment of the economy that's doing quite well. That's people that have capital and are benefiting from the higher interest rates. But there's other sectors of the economy which are finding it extremely difficult, extremely challenging. So to me, I think it's going to be a very challenging 6 to 12 months ahead.
Well, Geoff Wilson, Chairman of Wilson Asset Management, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks, Ed.